And away we go.
All right, so seems like we have a lot in the news, so let's just get right into it right now.
Indeed we shall. And we'll start with the UK because, well, if Risk is going to come on here, he certainly discussed about this anyway.
Okay.
So, Chancellor Rees raises £26 billion in taxes at 2025 budget.
All right, interesting. Let's hear more about that.
On Wednesday, November 26, 2025, Rachel Reeves, Chancellor of the Exchequer, presented the autumn budget, raising taxes by £26 billion in 2029-2030, according to the Office for Budget Responsibility. Constrained by party and market pressures, Chancellor Rachel Reeves faced Labour backbenchers, resistance to spending cuts, and lenders' nervousness, forcing tax increases over borrowing or deep cuts. The OBR analysis shows freezing income tax thresholds and national insurance thresholds until 2031 will raise receipts by £14.9 billion, with nearly 1 million new basic rate taxpayers and 790,000 extra higher rate taxpayers. For example, someone earning 50,000 may pay about 15,000 by 2029-2030, with combined income tax and national insurance raising 1.5 percentage points due to fiscal drag. Looking ahead, OBR forecasts indicate public debt will raise from 95% of GDP to 96.1% by the end of the decade, while 10.1 million higher rate taxpayers are expected by 2030 amid threshold freezes.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. What are your thoughts on
When I've heard that Labour, during their campaign at the last general election, with all the promises they say they'll do, one of which is to not raise taxes, and the moment that Labour got to power, surprise, surprise, most of the time they haven't actually committed to what they promised at the general election. I'll give them credit for one thing they've kept their promise on, which is renationalising British Rail. But that's it. That's all I know of. When a party that's going to be in government say they're not going to raise taxes, but the moment they get into power, they raise taxes. That's not a good look. Then again, every party that gets into power always pretty much makes promises that most likely never keep. But if there's anything that I put my foot down on is just raising up taxes in general and how much we pay to the governments. Although it's important that government departments get money somewhere, don't take it out on the people, especially those that barely have enough to get by in life.
Hmm. Interesting. I don't really have much to say about that. I don't really have much to really say about that. All I'm gonna say is like, I just hope nothing go everything goes well and nothing like, gets out of hand. But yeah. Is there anything else in there in news?
Teenagers launched legal challenge over Australia's ban on social media for children.
Wow. All right, let's hear more about that news.
On Wednesday, the Digital Freedom Project filed proceedings in the High Court of Australia challenging the ban on Australians under 16 from Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube. Led by John Rudick, Digital Freedom Project president and New South Wales parliamentarian, the challenge says laws due December 10th are grossly excessive and trespass on the implied freedom of political communication. Platform risk fines up to $49.5 million if they fail to comply, while the group says the ban will rob more than 2.5 million young Australians, affecting 2.6 million when enforced. Communications Minister Anika Wells said the federal government remains firm in its commitment to implement the laws next month despite limited High Court sitting days and acknowledged the ban is imperfect. The FP proposed alternatives, and Nayland said the ban risks vulnerable groups, urging digital literacy, age-appropriate features, and privacy-first assurance, as Snapchat enforces restrictions and Google warned YouTube's ban limits political input.
It seems like a lot of things are like, just I feel like a lot of platforms nowadays just like, implementing something that is usually either going to give some give someone a disadvantage or like, give everyone a disadvantage. Especially depending on like the rules and whatnot. If you don't comply to it, then like this can happen and that can happen. Uh, all I'm gonna say is this. Ultimately speaking, I would just say like we're gonna have to see how this plays out because I could not necessarily. I don't think I can necessarily 100% predict what may or may not happen. But ultimately speaking, yeah, it's like we just have to see how this all plays out. Do you think that this is a good thing or it's like a bad thing?
As of now, I'd say it's mostly a bad thing. The only good that comes out of this social media ban in Australia is that there'll be restrictions on particular users of certain ages from seeing content that they should not be seeing at such an age. Well, the reason why I say it's mostly bad is because why are we limiting people from using platforms just because they say, oh, you're too young, you won't understand what's going on in social media? Another thing I'll say is, how are we letting our government say what children can't and can't do? That should be the parents' job to enforce authority and rules on their children about what they do online. The government should not be doing that.
Yes, I would say there's a case to make like for both arguments. Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right about one thing, especially though. Parents should definitely have the final say on what they could look at online because ultimately speaking, the government is not your parent. The government is not our parent, and the government should not be saying what you can and cannot watch on the internet. I would say if it's a good parent, then yeah, the parent should definitely limit social media, or just not allow their kids to have social media until a certain age. I would say maybe I would say when you're like in middle school, I'd say maybe 14 or 15 is probably an appropriate age to say the least to be able to at least have social media because it's like you're only a couple of years until it's only a couple of years until you're an adult. Like if you're 15, there are 3 years until you're a legal adult. 16, 17, 18. Depending on where you're at, because I know there are certain places where you can be considered an adult at like 16 or 17. It really does depend on where you're at in the world. But yeah, it's yeah, I would say this social media ban and everything about this is I'd say the parents should decide, and if the parent is a great parent, they will restrict social media or not let their kids have social media until a certain age. But yeah, I don't think the government should have the final say. But yeah, is there anything else in the news?
New limits for a rent algorithm that prosecutors say let landlords drive up prices.
Huh. All right. That's an interesting one. Let's hear it.
On Monday, the Department of Justice announced a proposed settlement with RealPage Inc. that would bar the company from using real-time non-public data for price recommendations, pending judicial approval. The Justice Department's complaint said RealPage Inc. collected and combined landlords' non-public, competitively sensitive information, and its yield-star pricing system processed private landlord input to generate bespoke price recommendations. RealPage Inc. manages over 24 million rental units and holds an 80% market share, with more than 24 property managers, including Greystar Real Estate Partners, settling claims tied to its software. RealPage Inc. must remove or redesign features that discourage landlords from lowering prices, while prosecutors say the settlement should increase competition, and RealPage said it did not admit wrongdoing. Last month, governors of California and New York signed law. Governor Kathy Hochul's ban takes effect on December 15th, and Gail Slater, DOJ antitrust chief, said competing companies must make independent pricing decisions.
Well, what do you think about it?
This is kind of a grey area, and not just that I don't know much about this story. I think when it comes to like affordability and prices of rentals or just getting a place, there are many factors that play into what a property is worth. Is it close to good schools, a couple of parks? Is there public transportation nearby that gets you to other places in the city or states, wherever you might live? I think if people are going to determine what the rent should be for these accommodations for anyone, those factors should play a part in what is the price for the rent that you pay to live in that property. And whilst I'm not against having like data input about determining different prices, I wouldn't rely too much on the data affiliated and proposed prices and think, oh, okay, if the data says so, then let's go with that. No, I'd say there should be some independent thought into what prices rental places and other accommodations should be, depending on factors that they believe would be most beneficial to the residents living around those properties.
It is definitely a gray area. I will say that. But it really does just depend on. It really does just depend on like the situation and where you're at. Because yeah, like this could really go either way. I would. Hmm. But yeah, is there anything else in the news?
NASA recorded lightning crackling on Mars for the first time.
All right, let's hear more.
On Wednesday, NASA's Perseverance rover recorded 55 electrical discharge events over 2 Martian years, a finding led by Baptiste's team using the SuperCam microphone published in Nature. Triboelectric charging from rubbing dust particles occurs as fast winds, dust devils, and dust storms rub silicate dust particles together, while Mars's thin carbon dioxide atmosphere lowers the charge needed for sparks. By studying 28 hours of SuperCam audio, the researchers identified electromagnetic blips, 8-millisecond ring-downs, tiny sonic boom signatures, and validated these with a SuperCam replica and Wimshurst machine. Chide said the discovery has implications for Martian atmospheric chemistry and should guide designs protecting future robotic missions and human explorers from electrostatic discharges. Although presented as the first direct detection, researchers noted the study faces debate due to previous 2009 microwave detection attempts and calls for future instruments and verification missions.
Me personally, I don't think I really have that much of an opinion on it. Do you?
I don't think there's much to say about NASA's missions on Mars, if there is a Mars, just saying, and how and the power generated from the rubbing of dust particles in any way. Although that does sound interesting, if that could be done and generate power. However, you can't be too sure about what goes on beyond our planet until we see with our own eyes and even experience for ourselves that we can leave our atmosphere and explore our universe.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, I'll be honest. One time I heard from my friend, like he said, like I asked, like pretty much we were talking about this one time, and I said, like why weren't we able to, like, if they were able to go to space once, why can't we do it again? Like, why is it such a difficult? Why is it so difficult for us to do it now? I
That's a
mean,
good
yeah,
point.
it's like yeah, it's like if we were able to do it at one point in time, why wouldn't we be able to do it now? In fact, I would argue and say, wouldn't it have been harder for us to do it back then because we weren't that advanced. We weren't as advanced as we are right now back then.
Exactly. And given
So
the time we are at today, I would assume, in my opinion, that it would be a lot easier now to have the funding, get the budget in place in order to construct the rocket that is both reusable and although very heavy, very, very heavy, at least lightweight by aircraft standards, to be able to redo and perform as many space missions as possible.
yeah, I mean, I would even argue and say like, yeah, shouldn't it should be like it should be easy. I don't know. It's like it would have just made sense if they lied about it somewhere around this year. Although I'm gonna be honest, because we're more advanced, they would have found out that more people would have found out that they lied about it, just like immediately. But it's like it would just make more sense if they kind of lied about going to space now than they did back then, because it's like now that it's stuck in a contradiction. It's like we were able to do it back then, but we can't do it now. That makes no sense. I'm not saying there isn't a space, but I am at begging the question: if this picture of space that we have grown up to know, is it like actually space? Is it like the real space that we grew up to know, or is space just like completely different from what we know of it to be? Because I don't know. Like I have some reasons to believe that, like I I believe space exists, but I don't believe that we can go into it. I don't know. It's like I've just seen many other things. Like I've seen certain rockets too. Fail to like even get past like the firmament, because it's like that's literally what it is. That's blocking rockets from like just going in, going like out of going out of the space. I genuinely believe that we are like that we cannot leave this atmosphere. I genuinely believe that we cannot leave Earth. And if we were able to leave Earth, then cool, great. But I just cannot believe that we can leave Earth. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's like how were we able to do it back then, but we can't do it right now? Like
We
we
just don't
should be
know
more
until
advanced.
we just can't be too
Yeah,
sure
we
unless we experience that for ourselves.
exactly. We can't really be too sure unless we experience it ourselves, or until we see an actual successful rocket launch, like go out of the firmament and like just kind of just see, and then the person comes back and just like see. Now you could probably make the argument that things can probably enter from outside of this firmament, but like we cannot, we can't enter from out, we can't like go outside of our like our planet, so like other things can enter inside our planet. Like for instance, I would say like I'll be honest, has there really ever been like a real asteroid landing like on Earth? I don't like that. I'm genuinely asking this because like I've heard about them, but it's like has there like really been like a real asteroid landing like, on Earth? Probably. I don't know. Actually, no. There probably has. You can probably make the argument and say like things can enter inside our atmospheres, and like obviously like crash land like an astronaut. We can't enter out because we do not have the strength nor the technology to like somehow get out of our habitation. And if we were to get out of like our our planet, we would probably die just by like getting out of like our natural. I don't want to say natural habitat. It's making us sound like animals, but yeah, it's like the planet that we know and love, and that we
I do, yes.
yeah yeah. But yeah, is there anything else in the news?
Apple iPhone shipments to beat Samsung for the first time in 14 years.
Huh? Wow, really? All right, let's hear more about this news.
This year, Apple Inc. will retake the crown as the world's largest smartphone maker, Counterpoint Projects holding a 19.4% global market share and reclaiming number one since 2011. Counterpoint analysis Yang Wang said a large cohort who bought phones during the COVID-19 boom are entering an upgrade phase, boosting replacement demand. Earlier this month, Counterpoint Research published two reports showing Apple outpaced the market with iPhone 17 sales up 22% in the first month and 37% year over year in October, while Tim Cook highlighted the strong US and China performance. Apple said last month sales are growing faster than anticipated, and the holiday quarter is poised to approach $140 billion, while shipments growth is forecasted at 10% for Apple Inc. and 4.6% for Samsung in 2025. Looking ahead, Counterpoint projects 3.3% broader smartphone market growth in 2025 and expects Apple to remain top seller until at least 2029, aided by a foldable iPhone 17e, and 358 million second-hand iPhones sold between 2023 and second quarter of 2025.
What do you know? And I thought iPhone was losing their touch. Turns out they're gonna be.
Indeed they
Turns out
are.
they're high up there. And I thought they were losing their touch because, honestly speaking, every iPhone looks pretty much the same. Seriously, there's nothing new. There's no new features. Nothing. I mean, there's probably a new emoji, but that's about it. And probably a slightly better screen and a slightly better camera, but that's about it. But hey, good for them. And I thought they were losing their touch. Ever since I heard about the news about, them introducing digital ID through the Apple Wallet. You know what I did with the Apple Wallet? I deleted it.
No, I have no idea.
Yeah, I deleted it. That's what I did. Because it's like, and I'm like saying, well, it's a good thing I never set that wallet up, because like, I'll be honest, I don't know. I never wanted to use the Apple Wallet before. I never really had a reason to. And now I'm glad I never set it up to begin with. But yeah, anyway, great for Apple though. Great for Apple though. Like, their sales are up. They're up there. They're definitely still up there, and they're up there for the first time in, you said 14 years, right?
Yeah, since 2011.
Wow, that is a long time. It's almost a decade and a half. Yeah, like that is a very long time. But yeah, anyways, good for them. Keep it up, and I have no reason to really be against them other than the digital ID. But yeah, keep it up, I suppose. Seriously, I'm surprised that people were buying the Apple 13. I thought it was just, I thought people weren't buying. I mean, I knew people were buying it, but I just didn't think that many people were, like, really excited about it. Because I don't know, like every iPhone just seems to be the same. I'll be honest. I could probably maybe go back. Maybe I could probably even downgrade to like the other iPhones, and like, probably give me the same. It would probably give me the same thing, just like, a downgrade. The only problem is that it would probably be a downgrade version of, like, the recent iPhone. But other than that, that's about it. But because it's iPhone, they'll probably somehow like tell you to like update it and like get the update it and like get like whatever the other iPhone has, all that. But yeah, I would say this: keep it up, good luck, and maybe, just maybe, because I've been thinking of getting a flip phone, not to replace my phone, but it is what it is.
It was what it was.
Exactly. But yeah, is there anything else in the news?
Some families are adopting turkeys for Thanksgiving instead of eating them.
Wait, adopting turkeys?
Yeah.
Let's see. Wow. I'll be honest. I'm actually kind of not mad at that. That sounds pretty good. Adopting turkeys instead of eating them. I mean, know that'll make some vegetarians happy.
Oh yeah,
I definitely know
absolutely.
that'll make some vegetarians happy. But yeah, let's hear more about this news.
This past week, farm animal sanctuaries across the US promoted a Thanksgiving alternative where families adopt turkeys, some displaying photos or gifting the adoptions. To reduce holiday slaughter and raise awareness, the campaign aims to spare some of the tens of millions of turkeys killed at Thanksgiving and educate about factory farms. Animal rights advocates say Animal Sanctuary Erie Colo offers a $25 sponsorship with a certificate, photo, and visit. And since 2022, sponsorships have doubled annually, aiming for an $18,000 goal this year. Donations have funded immediate care measures such as pasture expansion, feeding, and rescuing turkeys, and public giving has totaled hundreds of thousands, Gene Bauer said, covering veterinary bills costing thousands. Farm Sanctuaries, which began its program in 1986, has rescued thousands of turkeys in nearly 4 decades. Well, Gus, a pardoned turkey, now at Leuven Arms, has lived there since 2023.
Oh, wow. You said the veterinarian bill was that much for a turkey? Wow. Well, I'm not gonna lie. Once again, I'm not necessarily mad about the fact that people are adopting turkeys. If I didn't have dogs, that'd probably be a cool thing to have. Like turkey walking around the house and me just feeding it the food that I eat. I mean, can I take it out to walk? Actually, no. I'd have to have a house. I'd have to have a farm or a house. Because I'm not gonna lie, those turkeys would probably, for the most part, stay outside. And maybe if I build a personal house, I somewhere for the turkeys to stay in when it gets cold and sure. No, those turkeys would have to stay outside. I feel like if I had only one turkey, sure, it would be invited into the house. And maybe I'd put something down for it to use that. That's but yeah, that's pretty cool though. Like people adopting turkeys. I mean, I'm not mad at it. Not vegetarian. I probably still eat a turkey, but I'm not mad at it. Well, if I had a pet turkey, I probably wouldn't eat it for the duration of that time I had the pet turkey. But other than that, yeah, sounds pretty good. Sounds cool. It's almost like having a pet monkey. I mean, if you're a good enough trainer, you can probably train the monkey to certain things that humans would do. That you would do as humans. I don't know, maybe a you around the house, maybe attack intruders. I don't know, but hey, good on them. Is there anything else in the news?
Poland chooses Sweden's Saab to supply it with 3 submarines.
Huh? All right, let's see why.
On Wednesday, Poland chose Sweden's Saab to supply 3 A-26 submarines to strengthen its Baltic Sea defenses. Under the Orca program, Poland prioritized major naval purchases as one of its biggest acquisitions, with Warsaw ramping up military investment to counter what it sees as a growing threat from Russia after Moscow's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. The contract includes reciprocal industrial commitments and a training submarine valued at around 10 billion zlotys, $2.73 billion, with Sweden providing a gap filler submarine for the Polish army. Markets reacted with Saab shares rising about 3.2% after the announcement, with Ulf Kristersson, Sweden's prime minister, said the deal showed the strength of Sweden's defense industry. The agreement deepens industrial cooperation via the Saab PGZ memorandum, as Warsaw received competing offers from Germany, Italy, France, Spain, and South Korea, aiming to finalize the commercial deal by second quarter of 2026, with first delivery expected in 2030.
Do you have any thoughts on this?
I think this is a win-win for both Poland and Sweden. Having committed to strengthen its naval defenses really shows Poland's commitment to its overall defense, not just with their borders, but also in case other countries try to attack Poland, at least Poland are buying up with defense vehicles to protect themselves in case they're in danger. And it's also a win for Sweden to show that if a country like Poland, which is a growing economy and as it stands now is one of the biggest economies in Europe, buying from Sweden for its defense vehicles, that just show this gives a lot of credit to Sweden with its defense industry and building such defense vehicles.
I will say this too. Definitely, definitely Poland has a lot right now, and Poland definitely has a lot to definitely Poland is doing doing something right. If they're obviously, I would say Poland is definitely doing something right. Because this is like you said, a huge win for Poland. And all I'm gonna say is I wish Poland nothing but the best, and I just want them to continue to succeed. You know, I have nothing against them, and yeah, I'm hoping that Poland continue to do more. I don't really have that much of a strong opinion about this, but I would say yeah, Poland is definitely doing that. But yeah, is there anything else that I need?
New Zealand mother gets life sentence for killing children in suitcase murder. Yeah, suitcase murders.
Wow. Well, good. Let's hear more about the news. Let's hear more about this.
The Auckland High Court handed down the sentence on November 26, 2025, sentencing Hak Young Lee to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. Investigators say Hak Young Lee wrapped the bodies of Minu Jo, 6, and Yuna Jo, 8, in plastic, stuffed them into suitcases, and hid them in a storage locker at a suburban Auckland facility, later sold at auction. A jury in September convicted Lee, rejecting a not guilty by reason of insanity defense, while Crown Prosecutor Natalie Walker said the Crown suggests that when she gave her two young children naltrepitline, it was a selfish act to free herself from the burden of parenting alone. Justice Venning ordered Lee be treated as a special patient under the Criminal Procedure Mentally Impaired Persons Act, and New Zealand police credited South Korean agencies for their cooperation on Wednesday. Family statements read at the hearing said the sentencing highlighted deep emotional scars, with Jimmy Se-wook Jo and Chun Ja Lee speaking as Yuna Jo and Minu Jo would have been 16 and 13 today.
So this person killed their children because they were afraid to, be a single mother.
Sadly, yes.
Why don't you do what everyone else does? You meet someone online, or in person, preferably, but online. Try to find a nice dad that will step up a nice man that will step up and be a stepdad. I know that most men probably don't want to be a stepfather, but there is one out there who will. For me personally, if I'm going to be a stepfather, I would at least want to have one or two children by the woman by the woman who already has children. That's me. That's me personally, because I don't know. I just want my own kids. Look, I can take care of other people's kids, but I can take care of another man's kids who doesn't want to take care of his own kids. But like, man, I'll be honest. I'm really just going to need my own kids, my own lady. But that's just me. But other than that, yeah, it's like there's men out there who will, who would want her, being a single mother and all. There are men out there who would want her. So like, killing your killing your children is not the way. Besides, if you didn't want to be a single mother, I don't know what you think this, but I will say this: if you didn't want to be a single mother, if you were afraid of the idea of being a single mother, whoever the man that she got with was, that probably should have scared her enough to not do anything until she was certain that that man was going to stay, or just wait until marriage. Literally anything. Literally anything. Literally, you could have done anything to avoid that. To avoid having kids. To avoid having kids. At least at that time you had. But you killed your kids because you weren't afraid of being a single parent. Well, I'll be honest. Well, in all honesty, to a degree, that she has to blame herself for that. Whoever, like, I don't even mean to be rude, but she chose to sleep with, like, whoever the man she slept with was. He chose to leave. He chose to leave. She got pregnant, had her children, and then killed them because she was afraid of being a single parent. It's like I said, why don't you just do what everyone else says and just meet someone? Like, warn them saying, hey, I have kids. It's probably going to take a while because most men don't want to take care of another man's child. Most men don't want to do that. Once again, personally for me, if I like you enough, I'll do it, but only if we can have our own kids. That's just that's just a deal with me personally. Other than that, yeah, I wouldn't want to take care of another person's kids either. You know, if I like her enough and I like the kids enough, then yeah, sure, I'll do it. But that's me. But yes, I would say she definitely deserves that sentence because she killed her children out of fear of raising them alone, which is not a good reason to kill your children. But yeah, is there anything else in the news?
Under a cloud, its Olympic flame begins its journey to the Milano-Cortina Winter Olympics.
Alright, let's hear more.
On Monday, the Olympic flame was lit during the rehearsal at the Archaeological Museum of Ancient Olympia, with organizers saying it will serve as the official torch after Wednesday's indoor ceremony was delayed by rain. Forecast of cloud and continuous rainfall meant sunlight could not ignite the parabolic mirror, so the Hellenic Olympic Committee said the ancient stadium ceremony was impossible. Greek actress Mary Mina acted as high priestess, presenting an olive branch while sunlight focused through a concave mirror lit the flame, and Petros Skaidatsis became the first torchbearer. From Olympia, the flame will begin a roughly 12,000-kilometer torch relay through Greece and Italy, carried by more than 10,000 torchbearers toward Milan for the Winter Games opening. The relay and games blend ancient ritual with modern logistics as the 2026 organizing committee planned 2.4 million cubic meters of artificial snow using 948,000 cubic meters of water amid alpine snow-covered decline.
Very. I don't necessarily have any real. I don't have a real opinion on you.
It's going to be quite a challenge, especially with 2.4 million cubic meters of artificial snow. That's a lot of snow, especially if it's going to be in places where there isn't enough snow to form naturally around the mountains. I assume there's going to be mountains nearby, because you can't have the Winter Olympics in the city centre of Milan because there's the urban island heat effect, where it's generally going to be warmer in city centres, urban areas, than it will be in rural areas because, well, there's crowds of people that emit carbon dioxide, which warms out our climate around us. So, of course, it's going to have to be artificial snow being brought in somewhere to then create and form elements of tracks, obstacles, and just elements of providing the winter games to be taking place.
Yeah, like I would say yeah, like, definitely making it. You definitely made a great point. And, all we can do is like wait, see what's gonna happen next. But yeah, is there anything else in there?
There should be. European Parliament backs 16-year age limit for social media. Calls for CEO accountability.
Hmm. All right, let's hear more about that. Let's see.
On Wednesday, the European Parliament urged EU member states to set a minimum age of 16 for minors to access social media without parental consent. Led by Christel Schaldemose, Danish Social Democrat and report lead, the report cites rising adolescents' mental health problems linked to platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. No Snapchat, interesting. The Parliament approved the protections with 483 votes in favour, 92 against, and 86 abstentions, calling for a ban for under 13s, parental consent for under 16s, loot boxes, and recommender algorithms. The report urges the European Commission to standardize age checks across the EU, and next year the Commission plans to propose the revised Audiovisual Media Services Directive and a new Digital Fairness Act. Facing resistance, the plan proposed by MEPs, including holding Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk accountable, with some countries like Australia, Denmark, and Malaysia also moving toward age restrictions.
Hmm. Very interesting. I will say this. I will say this. There's definitely a lot going on. There's definitely a lot going on. Definitely been a while since I've heard Elon Musk. Man, speaking of which, what has he been doing?
Well,
Besides
still, I'd
tweeting on.
assume he's still doing Tesla, SpaceX, maybe the Boring Company. I'm not sure about Hyperloop One though. I assume he stepped away from that, but yeah, he's still busy as always. And of course, twitting on Twitter X, as they always like.
Yeah, I'll say like the last time Elon was really talked about was when he did that. I believe it's called a Roman salute. I believe it's called a Roman salute, like the thing that hey, hey, the thing that Hitler did. Fine, the thing that Hitler did. You know, yeah, it's like I didn't necessarily. That's like the last time I really heard about really Elon Musk. He hasn't really been doing much of anything. And with Trump too. Oh, and Trump is definitely in some you know, so what people would call it like deep doo. But whether it's true or not, that's not what we're talking about here. But yeah, I would say in general though about like the topic, I really I don't know, don't necessarily have a real opinion on it. How about you?
I will say this: whilst it's important to protect children from seeing stuff that they should not be seeing, there is also concerns about whether children are given access to devices and phones, and of course that governments should not be deciding what children can't do. That's the responsibility of the parents and whatever carers of said children. The fact, again, I don't have any problem with providing safety and safeguards for children or other minors. However, whilst it may start off as protecting the young ones, if there isn't anything specific or clear in regards to how that will be enforced and how it will be implemented, who's not to say this could go further beyond safeguarding children? What if these same restrictions would apply to older people, and not just people on social media, but also may also apply to restrictions on particular platforms with information that arguably people may or may not agree with, and information that people of all ages that shouldn't be seeing information, but yet if people know about it and speak out on it, that will raise alarm bells for whoever's in charge. And something has to be done. People have to address, they have to apologize for what's been said in the past. They step down, and then someone else takes over.
Yeah, I will say this. You're absolutely right. It can go hand in hand. But ultimately speaking, I would say even if you did implement, even if you did, they're gonna do something along the lines of that. Children are always are gonna find a way to somehow get on social media or get on any form of site in general. They're gonna find a way. They're going to find a way because you know to the youth, social media is addicting, and even to some older people, social media is addictive. Not addictive, addictive. Everyone in the world, kind of most people in the world are addicted to social media. Me, I mean, I like social media, but I'm kind of me personally. I'm not done with it yet, but it's like I'm trying to back off of it, but I'm not completely done with social media yet. But I can see why unless you're like a social media influencer or just or you just are making videos for YouTube or just just content in general. I don't see the purpose in social media, or unless you're trying to spread a message of some sort. I don't completely see the purpose of social media. I hope when that day comes, I would be able to give up social media completely, completely and give it up. I think I will, because at some point during this year, because at some point during this year, I was off it for 7 months, so or off Instagram for 7 months. I was still on kind of on Twitter, so I was off Instagram for 7 months. So I think I'll be fine for the most part. But yeah, definitely something very tricky, very addictive. But yeah, is there anything else in the news?
The FIFA Arab Cup 20.
All right, let's see this line.
All right. So as of 2 hours ago, the FIFA World Cup Instagram page put up a post showing the qualified teams for the FIFA Arab World Cup taking place in Qatar, and these countries are Algeria, Bahrain, Comoros, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Morocco, Oman, Palestine, Qatar, of course, they're the hosts, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Syria, Tunisia, and finally, the United Arab Emirates.
Everything is a lot. Okay. Yeah, I really don't have much to say. Yeah, I don't have a real thing. I just don't. Do you have anything?
I have one burning question that has to be answered immediately.
What is it?
Ever since October 7th, 2023, I've seen lots of people posting stories on social media how Palestinians have been through a very, very rough patch. Lives have been lost. Children that are alive today are considered amputees, like they lost an arm and a leg, not just metaphorically, but literally as well. And it's awful that even when not much attention is given to Palestine as the attention was given to Ukraine in 2022, and of course for Sudan today in 2025, as it does with Nigeria, Ethiopia, Myanmar, and even Tanzania of all countries. If there are people that are still raising awareness for what goes on in Gaza, which I respect, I'll give them credit for that. Where are the people that are advocating for peace in Gaza and for Palestinians? one of those people when it comes to the FIFA Arab World Cup. Because for sure, if those people are still around, which they will be, they would be backing Palestine to win the whole thing. I think it's possible, not just the fact that there aren't many countries in the Arab world to take part in this competition, but I mean, Qatar won the Asia Championship a couple of years ago before they hosted the World Cup in 2022. So I think, regardless of how well countries have done before this competition is coming up in 2025 in Qatar, the Arab World Cup, I think Palestine may potentially have a chance.
You think we might have a chance?
I mean, it's a stretch, but I mean, it'd be pretty cool if Palestine did win the FIFA Arab World Cup. I mean, the FIFA Arab Cup. I think a lot of people that are supporting Palestine ever since October 7th happened, I know for sure that messages and showing support for Palestine will reignite on social media if they go on to win the FIFA Arab Cup.
Whether they do or don't, I don't really know. I don't know. But yeah, like worst case, we just have to see what happens. That's all we can do. Wait and see what happens. But yeah, is there
Indeed.
anything else today?
Indonesia investigates radioactive contamination in some exports to US and Europe.
Let's hear more.
On Wednesday, Indonesia opened a criminal investigation after radioactive contamination forced recalls of shrimp, spices, and sneakers bound for the United States and the Netherlands. Police investigators formally launched the probe. Task Force spokesperson Bara Hasibone said. Investigators said the suspected source is a metal processing plant at Cikande Industrial Estate, Banten Province, Java, where Peter Metal Technologies Management returned to China. Setia Diarta said earlier this month. Earlier this year, Dutch authorities reported traces of cesium-137, and inspections found contaminated boxes of sneakers and zinc powder containers. Authorities have decontaminated sites and barred contaminated goods from entry, affecting around 20 factories in the Cikande industrial estate and 9 employees treated at a government hospital in Jakarta. Authorities are holding contaminated containers pending re-export, while the US Food and Drug Administration said detected levels posed no acute health risk, but noted long-term exposure concerns. This is the first time I'm hearing that zinc is seen as a bad thing. For most of my life, when I hear about zinc and looking at zinc-related products, I don't see anything bad coming from zinc. But this story has changed everything when I think about zinc as a whole. That's one thing to point out. Another thing is that in regards to how countries are handling contaminated exports, or at least imports, actually I'm not surprised how the US are handling it. They say, "Oh, it's not a bad thing, but you should be aware of the long-term effects that are coming from these goods." Like, I don't think the US gives too much of a damn about anything so long as there is some kind of profit being made out of bringing these goods in to provide to people in the US. So hey, that's all I know as of now. I think there could be more, such as, well, traces of cesium-137, which I never heard such a name ever in my life. But of course, if people say it's bad, it's bad. But of course, I can't just be invested and agree with that what the substance is bad. Why is it bad? And how badly could it affect other people? Because if people are saying this is a this is a big deal, this is very bad, if it's terrible for people's health, then we got to do something to crack it down, and they should. But they just say, but all I'm hearing is, oh, it's bad. What's the process? Yes, people are saying we're going to decontaminate the goods that comes in. But is that enough, though? I don't think it's enough. I think you need to address the root cause. How has these goods been contaminated to begin with? Of course, investigations are being done, but we're not going to hear much about what this investigation is or what has been done until a couple of months later on, once they'll say what is the issue and what are the consequences for these factories for being liable and responsible for letting such errors from getting through the goods.
Hmm. I will say this. Yeah, like you definitely do have a point. I will say, yeah, and once again, I will say this. Pretty much as far as these products are concerned, it's like it's not bad, but I just want to make sure you know the long-term effects of these products before we sell them to you. It's pretty much like everything. It's pretty much like you know, some certain hair products in the United States. Where it's like, okay, you can put it in your hair, but just remember the long-term effects that people never read and people will consume and then regret doing it later if something were to happen. So all we can do is just hope and pray and just see if people are smart enough to realize the long-term effects and make the most rational decision that they can possibly make and just avoid it. But yeah, is there anything else I can do?
That is us.
All right.
Peace.